Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today is none other than Matthew Daugherty, who Daugherty and I actually started the very first mastermind together that led to the Perfect RIA. So really, Matt, without you, none of this would have happened. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. I am so happy to be here. If they don't know, I was actually there when you and Micah recorded your very first podcast, which I don't believe ever actually got on the air.
It did not. No, podcast team scratched that one that was recorded in a bar in Colorado.
Yeah, right. I was there, and I still get teased to this day because I went home early. I couldn't handle it.
Well, that's fun. But joking aside, you and I met years ago, like 2016, maybe 2015. I had posted on the FPA forum trying to start a mastermind, and you had reached out. I'm in the Seattle area. You're in Cleveland. And said, hey, listen, we're a long ways apart, but let's see if we could do this anyway.
It worked out, man. I mean, this is the way of the world now. Everybody does it this way, right? But that's really how it all started.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to chat today. You and I have had the chance to meet together in person and virtually on dozens of occasions. One of the big lessons I've learned in working with you is how to bring on other advisors into your team. You spent quite a lot of work, a lot of time in your office in Cleveland about training and mentoring and bringing on advisors and even helping advisors take the next step in their career.
Yep. And don't be modest. That's the only thing you've learned from me. I've learned everything else in my practice from you. But yes. Yes.
Well, either way, if this is the only thing or many things, I've learned more than one from you. We were even we were in Georgia together not long ago at a stunt car school, racing car together as part of a mastermind. So that was a lot of fun too.
Yes, we were.
But let's talk about this bringing advisors in. I know some head trash I had for years, even after you had done it several times successfully, is how do I bring an advisor in and transition credibility with clients, right? They're not going to want to talk to the new guy. How do I make sure the new guy doesn't just take all my clients? But these are things you've tackled several times over.
There is so much head trash around it. And quite honestly, the team that I've built, I mean, when I started doing this, I initially started doing this just as a way to help the next one in line. I kind of looked at the way that the industry was going. I looked at the way I started my career. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this. It's not really fair to the client to just throw somebody out there with no experience into the mix. And I didn't start transitioning clients right away, right? So that took me a long time because I actually trained probably 3 advisors, I think, all of which kind of just I helped them get the jobs into the next. I helped them move into the next position with another practice, not with my own. And it was only about 2 years ago that I really started transitioning client relationships. I guess it's been a little bit longer than that, but yeah, it's hard. I mean, the fact is I think you've heard me say this before, is one of my favorite sayings that I just came up with myself. And that is that, especially I think in our business, most of us are far more important than we believe we are. We're far more important than we believe we are, and we're far less important than we think we are. We think that we're so important. We're the only people that can handle a client relationship. But the reality of it is you'll find, especially if people are comfortable with the person you're transitioning them to, and if they're getting your recommendation, the transition is not that difficult at all.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised how easy it was. And then being able to, and we talk about this all the time, these masterminds, being able to hear your experiences gave me a lot of comfort. Like, all right, I know Matt, and he's a great guy, but he seems like the same kind of guy I am. Obviously more beautiful hair, but it seems like the same kind of guy. And like, he's successfully done this. Like, it's gotta be possible, right? But like, otherwise I would sit and think like, oh, there's no way this can happen. Like, there's just no way it'll work. Nobody's as good as I am, or at least nobody's good enough.
Well, I think that's how we all do things that we're super uncomfortable with. We see somebody else do it, and all of a sudden we say, well, if he can do it, I can do it. I mean, come on.
Totally. Well, talk a little bit for us about the clients that you've transitioned. How did you make the transition? I mean, I'm sure there's this tier of clients where you say, well, maybe I'm going to graduate and maybe I'm going to transition. That's kind of an easy thing. But for clients that you've had a relationship with, right? You and I have both been in the industry almost 20 years. There's people we've worked with a really long time that we have a deep relationship. How do you even start that transition?
Well, I think I'll start with this. Number
Please.
one, I think when you make a decision to do something like this, you have to start with your own why. Everybody on this podcast always hears you guys, specifically Micah, say, what are you solving for?
Yeah.
Why is it that you want to do this? Why do you want to transition relationships? Are you trying to build a team? Do you want to put yourself more into a leadership role? Are you trying to transition out of the business? What is the reason behind why you're doing it? And then use that to set some goals for yourself as far as what is it that you need to do to actually achieve what it is you want. So for me, I've been on a slow path of trying to get down to about 100 relationships that I manage, ideally less. I really want to get down to about 80 relationships that I personally manage.
Sure.
And so in doing that, I brought in people that I didn't do it the easiest way. Like you went out and you hired somebody that had experience in the industry already.
Correct.
I hired people that didn't have experience. I brought in people that we brought in as interns. We groomed them so that they would, I mean, the reality of it is I did it because with someone who is an intern, someone who's coming out of college, who doesn't have any experience, who hasn't done it themselves already, they will likely buy into your system and do what you tell them to do. They don't want to just do it their own way. Absolutely. Yeah. And so we created a training program where people were able to come in and operate as essentially paraplanners initially and work side by side with myself, with Roger, the other advisor in our practice, witness client meetings, process transactions. But at the same time, we always had 2 classes every week, and we still do. So every Monday afternoon, we have a class. Every Thursday morning, we have a class. And basically, we do a couple things. One is that we share leadership lessons, helping them learn how to actually be leaders themselves, not just be order takers, if you will, but also share what does financial planning mean to us in our practice, the Balanced Wealth Group.
Interesting.
And we communicate that as much as possible. But one of the other things that I did, and I think this is very impactful, and this goes back to years ago before I ever even started a team, I remember meeting a young advisor that was my age, and he was complaining, he was with Morgan Stanley, and he was complaining about the advisor he was working under because this guy had been telling him for quite a while that he was going to transition relationships to him, and he was going to give him more responsibility, and he was going to let him have the ability to grow. And he wasn't. He wasn't doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I realized I had to create for these young people coming in was some type of a visual that said, here's where you're at now.
Interesting.
And here's your next step. And here's the step after that. So it really goes from paraplanner to, we call it paraplanner, then support advisor, then servicing advisor, and then lead advisor. And in each one, we identify the specific responsibilities that they will have and the expectations we have of them and what their income should look like when they get there.
Boy, I love that because it's interesting. You mentioned the example of the advisor who was waiting for people to transition clients to them. And I think I know I've seen it a bunch of times. I'm sure you have as well, right? Younger advisors. I hate to use that phrase. It makes me feel like I'm an older advisor.
I know.
Right?
Well, we're not, but we are.
We're
at the
not.
same time.
We're not. We're at our prime of advising. But there's a ton of advisors who were hired with this expectation, like they'd get all these clients, and then years go by, and that never happens. But I love this idea of having a visual, a one page that's really the expectations. And I think if you're on either side of this, if you're the senior or the junior, to have that in place so that you all know what's the next milestone. And as the senior one, to commit to, hey, when they hit this milestone, like I agreed to do these things, I can't keep telling them someday.
That's correct. And one of the things that I make sure I do, I have monthly one-on-ones with each of them. So we sit down and we talk about their goals. We talk about, first and foremost, what is on your mind. That's I get teased because that's my first question every time. They know exactly what's coming, but what is on your mind? And most of the time they come to me with something that's going on within the practice, but every once in a while I get a bomb dropped on me about something in their personal life. But it's good to know those things and to help them through those, because the reality of it is that I am a leader in their lives. And if they can't share that kind of stuff with me, then how am I able to really help them navigate what they're going through and how to balance that out with the work that they're doing for us?
So these monthly one-on-ones, these are really kind of it sounds like it's less of like a performance evaluation and more of a deeper dive into, how are you doing as a person and as a professional, and how can I support you? I mean, so you're really taking time out to really mentor and lead these people. They're not just a cog in the wheel, not just an employee.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And if I'm allowed to share a conversation that Mike and I actually just had, we talked about the fact that he's actually much more patient with clients that want to just roll on about nothing that's related to finances. I have no patience for that whatsoever. But he's the opposite. He's with me. He was like, how can you spend a whole hour with somebody in a one-on-one with one of your employees? You got to be able to get everything done in like 20 minutes and get out of there. So everybody's different. But one of the things that we do is, not in every single one of those meetings, but usually like once a quarter, it's not a performance evaluation so much as just pulling back up that deck that we created that says, here's the career path you're on, and basically saying, okay, here is where you're at right now, and here's what I need to see from you in the next 3 to 6 months to be able to say, yeah, we're going to be ready to transition you into that next position, increase your responsibilities, increase your income, so on and so forth.
Now, just for perspective for everybody listening, how big is your firm, Matt? Because sometimes I think of career paths and I think, well, that's for multi-billion-dollar RIAs with dozens of people. Like at Carson, there's a career path. The rest of us, it's just do your work.
Yeah. So the firm right now is we at the beginning of the year we were at $350 million of assets under management. I think we're just over $300 million now. We have about 460 relationships that we manage. And that is between myself, Roger, the other senior advisor, and then we have really 2 young men, and Matt and Tim, that are acting as support and service advisors. They're kind of hybrids right now because they're transitioning to the full role of service advisor. And then another young man named David who just started with us out of college, the Ohio State University.
Yes, trademark registered. So then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have 5 people on your team?
Those advisors are the 5 that are servicing clients. We also have 3 people who are acting as what we call client concierge and office managers and so on and so forth. So,
I love it. Yeah, I'm just always impressed by your intentionality with this leadership and the mentoring, right? You mentioned earlier these 2 classes that you teach. Now, again, stop me if I'm wrong. This isn't like, let me see your checklist for the week or let me see your KPIs. I mean, you're really, again, using this as time to mentor these guys.
That's correct. And really talk about like what we're doing right now as we go into fall surge. Our focus in this fall surge is going to be benefits reviews with clients that are still working. Oh, nice. And so we've had to have classes where I talk about all the specific benefit plans that each part of a benefit plan that they're going to have to give some advice or some guidance on. And most of them are going to witness me doing it, but some of them are going to be doing them themselves. And so it's really just understanding that you don't have to go super, super deep with all these things, but even just reviewing it with the client and knowing what our position is on something like that, how we view something like, how do you manage a health savings account? Because there's so much more to it than just, hey, I put money into the health savings account and I take money back out. In fact, that's the opposite of what we recommend that they do. So it's just really helping them understand those things, teaching them about them, and make sure they really have a good solid understanding of how they operate so that they can be knowledgeable with the client.
Well, I love how that's got to give a really consistent client experience, right? If you're spending all this time mentoring and training people, right, the message is so consistent, advisor to advisor. I think too often, obviously not you, but for a lot of us, myself, we think that people on our team will learn by osmosis. Like somehow my client relationship manager, she'll just know what I'm talking about in client meetings, even though she's never in there. And to do this proactive, I know that we mentioned Micah a minute ago. One of the things he always does with his team members is do a full financial plan for them every year. That's like one of their employee benefits, so they can experience firsthand how this works.
That's actually a great idea. I go through financial plans with my employees, but I don't have it like set up like that. So I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, he does that with everybody, and the teams just love it. Unfortunately, this is one of my weak spots. Colleen, who's been with me now for 10 years, she like begs me every other year, like, could we please do a financial plan update? I'm like, yeah, all right, fine. Get on my calendar. So Matt, for advisors listening that are thinking about hiring their first advisor, associate advisor, junior advisor, whatever title, what are some thoughts that you have for them? What are some mistakes perhaps that you made that you said, boy, I wish somebody would have warned me not to do this?
Well, the reality of it is you have to be patient. If you're going to bring in young people like I have done and they don't have experience, you have to have patience, and you have to have a lot of patience. You also have to let them make mistakes. You want to monitor them as much as you possibly can. You don't want them to make mistakes, obviously, but they're going to do it. And the reality of it is that is how we as humans learn. We learn through our failures and through our mistakes. But ultimately, you have to help lead them, and you have to, like, one of the things I always share with them is I'm like, look, after they get to a certain point, I tell them you have to stop coming to me with problems, only come to me with solutions. It doesn't mean you have to go to the client first with a solution. You come to me and let me essentially check the box and say, yes, I concur with this, but come to me with solutions. So start learning how to do all these things. But really the biggest thing to me is get and I see this with a lot of advisors that I talk to that ask me about trying to cultivate someone. Get them on meetings as soon as you can. Mm-hmm. From day one, have them witnessing the meetings that you have them sitting in on the meetings, have them getting to know the client. Remember that with them being in the meeting, it's not just about them learning. It's also about them getting to know the client, because one day your goal is going to be to say to this client, I'd like to let Matt or Tim or David take over this relationship and manage it as we move forward. And the more experience they get, not just viewing those meetings, but as time goes on, obviously also giving them responsibility in the meetings, letting them actually communicate things, that is key. I think the other key is in between the meetings. Those individuals they have a title. They're either the paraplanner or they're the support advisor. They need to be handling almost anything that is not advice driven with the client. So the client calls in and wants to change a beneficiary, or the client calls in and they want to place a trade, or the client calls in and they want to make an IRA contribution. The support advisor, the paraplanner, that person should be handling that, because that is an excellent way for them to not only gain experience and learn, but it's also an excellent way for them to build rapport with that client, and for the client to see, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He can take care of me.
Yeah, I love that observation. Yeah, we want to get people in meetings as quickly as we possibly can. And you mentioned establishing rapport. I always talk about that as transferring credibility. And so, because if we just say, hey, junior advisor, come sit in every single meeting I'm in, that's going to get pretty boring for them pretty quick. Now, maybe they have a longer attention span than I do, but after the 100th or 300th meeting, they've heard you make the same jokes. One of the things that I swear I learned from you, but maybe just by osmosis, I had Alex, when he joined our team, I made sure right away he had an item on the agenda. Now, early on, it was a small item at the end. Yes. And then it got bigger and bigger to the point where it's like, great, you get half the agenda, I get half the agenda. But then I could really transfer that credibility. I say, boy, Alex has joined our team. He's an expert in banking. He's going to walk through this worksheet we have on making sure you keep enough cash in the right places. Alex, take it away. And so, yes, I needed him to learn from me, but I also, to your point, man, I needed him to establish rapport and credibility with the clients. Absolutely.
And it's huge, especially when you go to have that conversation that says, hey, I'd like Alex or whoever to take over this relationship. It's amazing to me how many meetings I go into and I'm nervous about having that conversation, and it goes so well.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have to fact check this one. Because this one, I absolutely swear I learned from you, but I've heard that maybe didn't. So when I've transitioned clients fully to Alex and they're meeting with him one-on-one the first time, I said to them, and I swear I learned this from you, I said to them, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, I'm going to have you meet with Alex on his own today, because I need to know how he does when I'm not in the room. So when you get done, will you let me know how he did? And if he missed anything, let me know and I'll fill in the gap. But I'm sure he won't miss anything.
You absolutely learned that from me, but I will be honest and tell you, I have not done that hardly ever. Like, I did it like 2 times, and you just happened to talk to me at a time when I did it, and it made so much sense, right? You were the smart one that implemented it. Me, I stopped.
Well, it's worked perfectly for me. So your genius ideas worked for me. I've used that with so many clients. I even add this line now, and I say, now listen, if you can stump Alex, he'll come and get me. But I got to warn you, nobody's stumped Alex yet. And the clients are like, oh, all right, this guy's our guy. But yeah, for some reason in my mind, I thought you were using that all the time. So I thought, if Daugherty's doing this, I'm going to use this same line.
See, if you think somebody else is doing it and they're doing it successful, you just go out and do it.
Just go out.
That's my action item after this podcast today, is to go out and start doing that again.
To go out and do that again.
Yeah.
I love it. Matt, for our younger advisors listening to this, what advice would you have for them? So you've experienced this. You've mentored multiple advisors. You've helped bring them up through the ranks. You've helped them get success in other firms. If you were talking to someone that had just graduated or was just starting at a firm as a junior or associate, what would you tell them?
I love that question. And I will tell you, the thing that has been most valuable to me as the lead advisor is specifically Matt, who's been with me the longest. Matt has never hesitated to be honest with me about things. Like, he has literally called me out after meetings and said, did you know that you do this? Did you know, like, as an example, we had fee increases when he first started. Like, he was in year 1 and we're having fee increases, and I'm having these fee increase conversations with people because, unlike you, I actually talk to the clients about it. I'll just send a letter.
So that's the Catholic in you. We've established this before.
Right. Mike and I, the Catholics. But he literally called me out afterwards and said, do you know that you get like almost like defensive, not defensive. I don't remember what the word was, but like, I was kind of like backpedaling on the way I was saying things and almost acting like it was like I was harming the client, and I didn't realize I was doing it.
Yeah.
So my point there, of course, is to young people who are coming up, don't hesitate to be honest with the advisor you're working with. Don't hesitate to call them out on things that they may need to do better. I do know also with Matt, when I was transitioning relationships to him, he did tell me one time that I made it seem as though it was a bad thing for the client, like that I wouldn't have done it myself. And so I had to change the way I was having the conversation. Don't ever hesitate to be honest and stand up to the team that you're working with and say the things that need to be said and help, because it's a value to us too.
I love it. Boy, there's so many places we could take this. I mean, right, there's so many angles, but this podcast is all about taking action. We already got your action item, right, is to use that great advice you gave me, physician heal thyself. Right. But what are some action items that we can give to the listeners kind of wherever they're at in their career?
I wrote down 4 things. If you're in a position where you want to start transitioning clients or you want to build a team, however you want to look at this, number 1, start off with what we said at the beginning. What are you solving for? Establish a why. Why do you want to do this? Specifically, like what is the final outcome? Number 2, once you have that, establish a plan of what you actually want to do. So you can't just go into it and say, I want to transition relationships. You need to basically say, I'm going to transition 75 relationships this year, and then figure out who you're going to transition and do it. 3 is, if you've got people in place or you're putting people in place, I would create that visual, create a roadmap for their future. Make sure they have something that they can see on paper or on the computer screen that shows them what the next level is for them, that helps them understand what they need to be working on. And then lastly, get them on meetings. Yeah. Don't hesitate. I mean, I know a lot of advisors who are very hesitant to put somebody young in a meeting because they think that they're going to embarrass them in some form or fashion. Don't hesitate to get them into the meetings. That it's the best experience that they're going to get. Every single intern we've ever had, we've had a lot of interns, and whenever we pull them afterwards, they always say that the most valuable part was being in on client meetings, even if they're not doing anything.
I love that. I think it ties back to your first action item of why, right? You've got to get really clear about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then your second one about your plan and milestones, because you're going to hit those speed bumps, right? No matter how well qualified your candidates are, no matter how good your systems are, you're going to need patience. You're going to have mistakes. But I think ultimately that's where the next level of your practice comes from. I spent years, fighting the idea of hiring another advisor. When I did, it transformed not only the practice as it occurs for me, but the value we were able to deliver to clients.
Yes. Absolutely. It absolutely will transform things. It doesn't always necessarily make your life easier.
No.
I wouldn't say I'm doing less work today than I was doing 5-6 years ago, but I'm doing the right work. I'm working on the things that I want to be working on, and all that stuff I don't want to work on anymore, those guys get to handle it, and they get to use it as a way to learn.
Oh, awesome. Well, Matt, really appreciate your time today. I appreciate just for everything I've learned from you over these years. It's been a lot of fun. I know we're getting together again in a few weeks, or maybe a month or two after this records, but it's been a lot of fun, my friend. Thank you for all your advice. Any parting thoughts to our listeners before we jump off?
I think I already gave the parting thoughts and the takeaways, other than just saying that, look, Matthew and Micah, you do wonderful work. Thank you for all the content you guys put out. It's a benefit to me, and I also love, because I know so many young people in the industry, I share your content with them, and they're always raving about you as well. So, and by the way, they love it when you name drop me, so go ahead and keep name dropping me.
Well, I love it. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time, and for all of our listeners, until next time, happy planning.